this summit, and let me open the fifth panel of our today's meeting, which is called Release of Crimean Civilian Hostages as one of the priorities of the President of Ukraine and the implementation of the peace formula. And to open this panel, I would like to invite the Ukrainian Parliament Commissioner for Human Rights, Mr. Dmytro Lubinets. Пане Дмитре, прошу вам слово.
Дякую. Доброго дня, шановні учасники та учасниці Кримської
dear participants of the Crimean platform, dear international partners. The key word for Ukraine today is freedom. This is about the freedom of Ukrainian territories, the freedom for every Ukrainian. Since 2014, Russia has been kidnapping and illegally detaining civilians also on the territory of the temporarily occupied Crimea. Why Russia has been doing that? The key objective is to quench all the resistance under occupation. Besides that, the Russian Federation wants to erase the identity of our nations. Because of that, they effectively bar people from using their native language, they ruin their historic and cultural heritage, and they try to portray the Crimean Tatars as so-called criminals. That's why the Russian Federation is fabricating some illegal accusations against people. And actually they can do everything, but they cannot strip me of my principles, of my freedom. This is what Lenia Umerova, a Crimean Tatar detained by the Russian, has to say. Russian aggressors heavily regulates presence of people, like being present in public spaces. This is considered a crime. Because of that, a meeting to commemorate victims of the Crimean Tatar deportation was effectively banned. Then there is drafting to the Russian army, and Russia has been massively enlisting particularly Crimean Tatars for that. Meanwhile, this is in violation of the Geneva Convention, the Convention to prevent inhumane treatment and tortures. Articles 5, 3, and 4 of the Fundamental Convention of Human Rights, customary humanitarian law, and the UN Charter. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I can go on with this list of international documents violated by the Russian Federation since 2014. Unfortunately, Russians have established a system of total detention of civilians on the territory of the Crimea. As of early September this year, the temporarily occupied Crimean territory had 219 political prisoners incarcerated. Of them, 30 plus are Crimean Tatars and 76 are Ukrainians, many of them in need of health care and assistance. I'd like to use this opportunity and address the international community with a plea to help our people. Azamat Yupov, a Crimean Tatar behind bars in Russia, had 4 strokes while behind bars, serving his 17 years term. Or Volodymyr Gorlikov, a retired person, he got 18 years behind bar. He was diagnosed with heart infarction and kidney cancer. Another prisoner was beaten so severely that He's got problems with his kidney and spine, and he's in bad need of medical assistance. In order to release all those illegally detained, President Zelensky, in his peace formula, has a separate point on bringing back all those illegally detained. This also includes the civilians illegally kidnapped and brought to the territory of the Russian Federation. On 26th of February, the first meeting on that matter was convened with President of Ukraine, Crimean Tatar leader Mustafa Aga, Prime Minister of Ukraine, representatives of 32 countries and international organizations in attendance. The work group on implementation of point 4 of the peace formula worked intensively to help us bring our people home. This includes journalists, media representatives, clergymen, civic society activists, local self-government officials, and so on. What else has Ukraine to do to bring its people back into the country? I think Ukraine has done everything. It has been addressing the international community with new initiatives. We are talking to the international community, primarily to the UN. It was an unpleasant surprise, to say the least, for us, when Denis Francis, chair of the UNGA, recognized the inability of this body to make Russia observe the international law, which says that world's biggest and most reputable organization, the Russian Federation, is a member of, with veto right, by the way, can do nothing about such violation. And we time and again have been bringing this to the attention, telling that failure of Russia to live up to its liabilities costs lives, lives of the Ukrainian people. This is what we've been paying on a daily basis. We address our partners with some specific proposals, asking world parliaments to recognize Russia's actions as genocide, which started back in 2014 with the legal annexation of the Ukrainian Crimea. We also demand urgent warrants issued to all Russian officials guilty of forced kidnappings and deportations of the Ukrainian citizens in the Crimea. We do understand this is not a simple piece of work, but we do also understand that the matter of survival for a democratic country is largely dependent on how fast we can be with returning control over the Crimea. It had all started with the Crimea. It has to end with it. Glory to Ukraine. Thank you, Dmytro, for your
Our next
talk.
speaker is Robert Řehák, chair of the International Religious Freedom of Belief Alliance, who is joining us online. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, šanovní ukrajinski druzi. Today we gather at the summit of the Crimea platform, a powerful symbol of our united commitment to justice, human rights, and the restoration of Ukraine's territorial integrity. I'm personally very sensitive to this issue because my grandfather Hilarion was from Ukraine. Today, as a chair of the International Religious Freedom of Belief Alliance, the Article 18 Alliance, a coalition of 43 countries, including Ukraine, I want to stress our dedication to defending of the fundamental right to freedom of religion for all citizens of Ukraine, including Crimea, to practice their religion freely and without fear of persecution, war, or death. We live in a world that the truth is twisted, in a world where geopolitical tensions have torn nations apart and where the voices of peace and justice are often overshadowed. We are witnessing a very sad trend where the Russian Orthodox Church which should be against any war and aggression, and the most vocal advocate for peace, has instead become collaborator of evil. The Russian Orthodox Church has failed in its sacred duty as a church and has instead been weaponized and became an instrument of Putin's propaganda and war against Ukraine, which is targeting priests, non-Moscow patriarchs affiliated Orthodox churches, Catholics, evangelicals, and Muslim minorities. This is not just a failure of a religious institution or church, it is a betrayal of the very essence what it means to uphold human dignity and justice. Please let us not repeat the mistakes of history. We cannot allow Munich 1938 scenario where the world powers wanted to appease Hitler by giving him Czechoslovakia. The evil can be not appeased, it must be fought. We stand with Ukraine because your fight is our fight, fight for freedom of religion, a fight against tyranny and oppression. I firmly believe that once the war will be over, Ukraine will be stronger and freedom of religion will be the fundament of the new generation's free life. Let me conclude by a quotation by our late President Václav Havel, who said, "I'm not an optimist because I'm not sure that everything ends well, nor am I a pessimist because I'm not sure that everything ends badly. I just carry hope in my heart. Hope is a state of mind, not of the word. Slava Ukraini."
Herojem slava. Děkuji. Thank you, Your Excellency. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Prime Minister of the Hellenic Republic, His Excellency Kyriakos Mitsotakis. Please, the floor is yours.
Dear President Zelensky, dear friends, the people of Ukraine have shown unique resilience and remarkable bravery in the face of the ongoing unjustified aggression by the Russian Federation. The atrocious, all-out war continues unabated well into its third consecutive year, in violation of every principle of international and humanitarian law, as well as of the UN Charter. Greece cannot but remain on the right side of history, as it has done from the very first moment of the invasion, steadfastly assisting Ukraine, together with its partners and allies, for as long as it takes. We sadly recall today that this horrendous aggression is not in fact the beginning of the tragedy for the Ukrainian people. The Russian aggression started well before the 22nd February of 2022. It began already back in the winter of 2014 with the illegal occupation of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol, deep into the sovereign territory of Ukraine. Dear colleagues and friends, we're here today to reiterate that the free world will never recognize the change by force of the international legal status of Crimea and all other occupied Ukrainian territories for that matter. We remain convinced that the 10-point peace formula by President Zelensky contains all the necessary constructive elements as confirmed by the participants in the recent peace conference in Bürgenstock. We are looking forward to the continuation of the process, hopefully with the participation of even more states. After all, what happens in Ukraine concerns the global international community. Dear Volodymyr, rest assured, Greece remains strong in its support of Ukraine, defending its sovereignty, its territorial integrity, and its people.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. And now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Salina Shambos, Political Director of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Cyprus. The floor is yours.
President Zelensky, Excellencies, heads of delegation, colleagues, distinguished participants. On the occasion of the anniversary of the establishment of the International Crimea Platform, I am privileged to be part of the summit of this platform and deliver this address on behalf of Minister Gombos. Cyprus's participation in today's summit reflects our strong, determined, and undeniable support to Ukraine, as well as our firm commitment for a lasting, viable, and meaningful peace in Ukraine. Such lasting peace can only be based on the principles of the UN Charter. Cyprus affirms its unwavering support for Ukraine's sovereignty, independence, unity, and restoration of territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders, including in the autonomous Republic of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol, and in line with relevant Security Council resolutions and General Assembly and international law. Russia's ongoing, unjustifiable, unprovoked, illegal, and brutal war of aggression against Ukraine directly questions the principles of international law and multilateralism. It questions the foundations where our shared democratic values are anchored and aims at creating a distorted world order where any country can become prey without shield of protection that stems from international law. Since Russia's full-blown war of aggression unfolded, Ukraine has successfully resisted its opponent on many fronts and has given us quite a number of reasons to be optimistic and hopeful. However, its most surprising success came in a theater where few may have expected Ukraine to prevail, in the Black Sea. This is a significant breakthrough, which of course can change the course of the war. Ladies and gentlemen, our efforts to bring justice are tireless, and we will continue utilizing diplomatic, political, and legal means to address illegality, suffering, and injustice. We avail ourselves in providing Ukraine with any possible assistance in order to restore peace and security in Ukraine. At the same time, we cannot but express our deep concern regarding the ongoing violations of international law, including human rights law and international humanitarian law by the aggressor. We denounce all ongoing attempts to forcefully and illegally incorporate the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine, including Crimea, into the Russian Federation, and the use of the Crimean Peninsula as an outpost in the Black Sea against Ukraine, as well as a means to support the attempted illegal annexation of other Ukrainian regions. Crimea is Ukraine. Cyprus supports Ukrainian-led efforts such as the Ukraine's peace formula and restoration of territorial integrity of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders are indispensable for achieving a comprehensive, just, and sustainable peace. I would like to reiterate Cyprus's readiness to constructively engage regarding the implementation of point 8 of the peace formula, countering ecocide, focusing on strengthening international assistance from demining of the deoccupied territories of Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, this war represents a test of our commitment, our collective commitment to the respect of the principles of international law. We cannot allow injustice and violence to prevail. I assure you from this forum that Cyprus will continue to be actively present in the framework of the international efforts towards a just peace and to work on the outcomes of the first Global Peace Summit, which took place in June in Switzerland, as an important step towards full respect of a rules-based international order and comprehensive, just, and sustainable peace for Ukraine, based on the principles of the UN Charter and international law. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you, Madam, for your statement. And now I turn to Her Excellency Ms. Tordis Kolbrun Gylfadottir, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Iceland. Please.
President Zelensky, Your Excellencies, Ministers, colleagues, on behalf of the Government of Iceland, I convey our solidarity with the people of Ukraine and resolute commitment to your freedom. Iceland stands with the Ukrainian nation in your fight for a just and lasting peace. Russia's annexation of Crimea and the full-scale invasion is not only a brutal and illegal assault on Ukraine and its people, it is an unprecedented and vicious attack on the Charter of the United Nations and the international system. We remain unwavering in our commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, including Crimea. And we are steadfast in our support for President Zelensky's peace formula. Ukraine will prevail as a free and democratic country. To this end, the people of Ukraine show profound moral courage, resilience, and willpower in the face of tyranny and war crimes. As outlined in the Reykjavik Declaration of the Council of Europe, there must be a firm international legal response for all victims, as well as for the state of Ukraine. Without accountability, there can be no lasting peace. This fourth summit of the International Crimea Platform is an important opportunity to underscore our resolve to unite around the core values of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law. We must stand firmly against the autocratic tendencies that threaten the foundation of international order and security. Iceland endorses the joint statement of the summit. Russia bears full responsibility for this war. We condemn the actions of Russia in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine, and we join other nations in demanding that Russia withdraws all of its military forces from the entire territory of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders as of 1991. Iceland stands with Ukraine.
Thank you, Minister. And now I invite Her Excellency Ms. Luminița Teodora Ordobescu, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Romania, to take the floor, please.
Your Excellencies, esteemed participants, dear Ukrainians, the fourth summit of the International Crimea Platform overlaps with a sad and tragic commemoration. 10 years since Russia illegally annexed the Crimean Peninsula. Today, as then, this act remains a breach of both international law as well as of Russia's legal and political obligation towards Ukraine. The fight Ukraine fights today against Russia's aggression did not start in 2022, but back in 2014. Then Russia and its proxies insisted on several propagandistic narratives to justify the illegal annexation of Crimea. First, that somehow Crimea was not rightfully part of Ukraine. Second, that Ukraine was endangering the rights of the people living in Crimea and Russia had to protect them. But we all know the actual facts. Crimea was and remains part of the rich Ukrainian culture and history. Its people have contributed to the Ukrainian society and economy and enjoy political autonomy. Russia's actions contradicted not only these historical and cultural realities, but its very own legal and political commitments as well. Let me recall that Russia recognized the territorial integrity of Ukraine, including Crimea, on the backdrop of the Soviet Union's dissolution. And it did so again in 1994 by signing the Budapest Memorandum, and again in 1997 when the two countries signed a bilateral treaty, ironically called the Friendship Treaty. Russia was never a friend of Ukraine. It only wanted to control Ukraine and keep its economy and society underdeveloped by denying the Ukrainian people their right to a European, democratic and prosperous future. Russia openly backed corrupt and loyal politicians to achieve these goals. But the people of Ukraine wanted a different future for their country. When the people of Ukraine raised up for this European future during the Maidan and the Revolution of Dignity, Russia responded with force. After the occupation in Crimea, it engineered a conflict in Donbass, and in February 2022, it launched a full-scale invasion, a full-scale war of aggression that continues to inflict tragic suffering on innocent Ukrainian civilians. Mariupol, Bucha, Ohmydyt, Poltava, each and all of them war crimes and crimes against humanity, acts for which the perpetrators will be held accountable, and undisputable proof of Russia's long-lasting design to crush Ukraine. And it all started in 2014. It all started with Crimea. Equally important, Russia was never concerned with the livelihood of the people living in Crimea. Just look at the tragedies happening in Crimea since 2014. We are talking about political imprisonment, forced deportation, brainwashing of children. This is what protection means in Russia's definition. What Russia has been doing and continues to do in Crimea is testimony to its intention for the rest of Ukraine. What Russia has done in the temporary occupied territories is testament to its barbarity. What Russia is doing by targeting civilian infrastructure, hospitals, schools, with its airstrikes is evidence of its cruelty. This is what is at stake in Ukraine. Fight for freedom and liberty. And this is why Ukraine will prevail. Glory to Ukraine, Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава. Thank you, Minister. Now I give the floor to Deputy Prime Minister, Minister for Foreign Affairs of Montenegro, His Excellency Ervin Ibrahimovic.
Distinguished President Zelensky, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to participate at the 4th International Crimea Platform Summit, which has been widely perceived as an important platform for sharing views and concerns on the situation in Ukraine. From the very beginning, Montenegro committed its unwavering support to this initiative. Our commitment to that undertaking has not just endured, it has increased. 2.5 years ago, none of us imagined the challenges we would all now face. But we have risen to the occasion. So are Ukrainians who are fighting for its freedom and homeland. We stand with them in their struggle more united, more determined, and more emboldened than ever before. Montenegro will never recognize Russia's illegal attempt annexation of Crimea, which is currently being used as a strategic springboard to launch Russia's brutal, unprovoked, and unjustified attacks to steal the identity of Ukrainian citizens, to abduct Ukrainian children, and to drive people from their homeland, like they are doing to the Tatars. We condemn all inhuman atrocity made by Russian occupying administration, including arbitrary arrest, killings, tortures, and deportation of Ukrainian citizens, especially children. It does not only exemplify the ideology of Ruskiy Mir in practice, but is also a sign of war which may materialize when international law, human rights, or the provisions of the UN Charter are no longer respected. We will continue to call for full accountability for the war crimes committed and will not recognize any attempt to change the status of Ukraine's territories, including Crimea and the city of Sevastopol, because respecting the sovereignty and territorial integrity of countries is a basic principle of the UN Charter. Dear colleagues, the challenges our countries face today are many and they are spreading. As we address these two, our support for Ukraine cannot waver. Nobody should have any illusions that the occupation of Crimea is a regional problem. It is a global problem. Unless we solve it together, we will de facto be to agree to a new international security architecture, a new global order based on the law of force imposed by Russia. The occupation of Crimea and restoration of Ukraine's full territorial integrity and sovereignty are necessary preconditions, not just for the security of Ukraine and the Black Sea region, but also for the stability of the global security architecture. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And our next speaker is His Excellency Mr. Marko Đurić, Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Serbia. Please.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants, allow me to express my gratitude for the opportunity to participate in the 4th International Summit of the Crimea Platform. Drawing from our own difficult experiences, the Serbian people feel deep empathy for the challenges that our friendly Ukrainian nation is facing. The Republic of Serbia fully recognizes the urgent need of achieving peace promptly and bringing the armed conflict to an end. Let me remind you that I recently had the opportunity to lead Serbia's delegation at the first summit on the peace in Ukraine, held in Bürgenstock. This demonstrated our country's dedication to supporting all efforts in achieving a lasting solution through all available diplomatic and peaceful means. The Republic of Serbia will support all efforts in this direction. Our country and people have shown their solidarity by providing direct financial, medical, and humanitarian aid to the people of Ukraine. Understanding the severe impact of energy shortages from our own experiences, we have also contributed by donating energy equipment to assist Ukraine's energy sector. It is crucial to emphasize that the Republic of Serbia fully and unconditionally respects Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty over its entire territory. We believe that this principle is a cornerstone of international public law and that its unconditional respect is essential for the peaceful coexistence of sovereign states. Concrete examples have already shown that breaching this principle can lead to far-reaching consequences. As we mark the 30th anniversary of diplomatic relations between Serbia and Ukraine, relationships grounded in friendly historical connections, Serbia reaffirms its commitment to supporting all initiatives aimed at finding a lasting resolution to the conflict in Ukraine. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Minister. And now I would like to invite to take the floor the Secretary General of the Organization for Democracy and Economic Development, Guam, His Excellency Altai Efendiev, who is here with us today. Secretary General, the floor is yours.
Дорогі українці та українки,
Dear Ukrainians,
Mustafa Cemilov, Krim Tatarların lideri, değerli Krim Tatar halkının temsilcileri, Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great honor and privilege for the first time to take part in the Crimea Platform Summit, and I would like to congratulate Ukraine on this annual occasion, which is organized amid the ongoing war, military aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine. This fact manifests a nation's resilience, decisiveness, uncompromised devotion to and commitment to its existential struggle to defend its independence, preserve its identity, and protect its right to decide on its future. We wish every success to this collective endeavor to restore as soon as possible justice and law and bring sustainable peace, stability, and security to Ukraine and the wider Black Sea region. We also reiterate our firm adherence to the norms and principles of international law and confirm our unwavering support of Ukraine's territorial integrity and sovereignty within internationally recognized borders, including territorial waters. Hence, we consider temporarily illegally occupied territories of Ukraine, including Crimea, as inseparable part of Ukraine. Consequently, we do not recognize the recent so-called municipal elections into temporarily occupied Crimea and consider them null and void. This principle stance applies to all Guam member states. Mr. Chairman, today is 931, correct me if I'm wrong, day of this brutal, criminal, most devastating war since World War II that has been unfolding in front of the whole world. Working and living in Kyiv, we were witnessing the heartbreaking atrocities and inhuman nature of this war. Recently, we saw massive attacks on civilian quarters and infrastructure, causing massive destruction and death in many regions across Ukraine. We strongly condemn this barbaric act and express our condolences to the families and relatives of the victims. I want also to express our praise and admire of unbreakable spirit, courage and bravery of Ukrainian people and its armed forces, and wish soon victory and also to stay strong and united for that purpose. This morning we attended the ceremony of opening of a memorial on the 18th anniversary of the deportation of Crimean Tatars from their native lands. A tragic page, a genocidal act in the nation's history. But it's one of the many similar tragic stories of the peoples of the Russian empires, which had one common destiny. They all had fallen victims to brutal colonial rule, bringing them on the verge of extermination, only to preserve the empire. This war is the continuation of the same logic. It is a genocidal war aiming at the subjugation and annihilation of the entire nation, with the only purpose of preserving the collapse of the decaying remnants of empire. Still, its aims go even further, attempting to reverse history by restoring the empire on its frontiers of 1991, thus leading to an even more dangerous and unpredictable world. Driven by this insane vision and guided by the far-fetched justification of this evil war, rulers of the empire act as the arbiters of the destinies of nations and peoples, as if having a mandate from above. Nature and behavior of empires do not change. Yet, there is a difference between what happened 80 years ago and now. Then, in the context of the ongoing World War II, there was no international system that could prevent such crimes. Nowadays, we have a system built on, after World War II, aimed at maintaining peace, stability, and coexistence of equal nations with respect to human rights and based on the agreed and universally recognized norms and principles. This system should have been mobilized and utilized to stop the war at the beginning. Regardless, we are seeing no signs of the collective will of global powers to stop the war based on the UN Charter, norms and principles of international law. Quite the opposite, the world looks far from unified in characterizing and addressing this war. Some global players show caution in refraining from calling things by their proper names. Aggression as aggression, war as a war, and the violation of law as a crime. Instead, we are falling into a dangerous whirlpool of dragging nations into different camps. This is my observation. Introducing new artificial division lines, so-called global north and global south, democracy versus autocracies. It seems the global powers continue with the practice of splitting and dividing nations for their interests and purposes. Underneath is the principle that might have the right. A dangerous trend of deviating from universally agreed and recognized principles and rules. When a permanent member of United Nations Security Council, the supreme organ to ensure peace, international peace, acts with impunity as a primary perpetrator, there is a clear sign of inadequacy of the existing international system. In my statement at the inaugural Crimean Platform Summit in 2021, just a few months before this war starts, I referred to the experience of our member states, Guam member states, the territorial integrity of which was violated and their territories were illegally occupied. Very telling story. Impunity for committed crimes has led to new crimes with more significant consequences. International law was subjected to manipulations and generally ignored. The expected principled moral stance of international community, first and foremost leading powers, was substituted by double standard practices, turning a blind eye, practice of appeasement, and prevailing of business interests over international law. Such an apostasy from established rules was an invitation to new crimes that eventually brought about today's tragic war. On a more optimistic note, now, today I can also refer to another important lesson from our region. When decades-long international so-called mediation for peaceful settlement in the above context failed and lost sense, a military force was used in full compliance with United Nations Charter, United Nations Security Council resolutions, norms and principles of international law to restore its territorial integrity, but no less importantly, to restore justice and law. I believe this lesson might be relevant to the situation in Ukraine. Mr. Chairman, distinguished participants, comprehensive, just, lasting, and sustainable peace can only be based on the existing norms and principles of international law. All nations, particularly those under permanent threats and risk to their independence, need a predictable, safe, and secure environment to ensure the effective implementation of their national projects. The peace formula of President Zelensky provides a solid basis for that aim. As Guam organization, we are fully committed to contributing to the objectives of the Crimea platform through regional cooperation within our competence. First and foremost, I refer here to the implementation of flagship initiatives, of which I spoke in detail on previous occasions, last year and before. We are ready and keen to cooperate closely with all regional stakeholders and interested parties of goodwill to achieve that aim. Thank you for kind attention, and Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Secretary General. Now I'm pleased to give the floor to José Manuel Alvarez, Minister for Foreign Affairs, European Union and Cooperation of the Kingdom of Spain. The floor is yours.
President Zelensky, Minister Sibilla, colleagues, friends, it's an honor for me to address all of you today during the 4th summit of the International Crimea Platform. I would like to convey once again Spain's admiration to the courage of the people of Ukraine who continue to resist Russia's brutal aggression. In these circumstances, Our support to Ukraine will continue for as long as it takes. This was the message Spain conveyed to President Zelensky during his visit last May, where we signed a bilateral agreement on security cooperation and we committed €1 billion to support Ukraine. This year marks the 10th anniversary of Russia's first attack against Ukraine when it invaded Crimea in violations of the principles of international law and the UN Charter. And 2.5 years ago, Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Since then, Russian forces have continued to bring death and destruction, attacking civilian targets and critical energy infrastructure. This cannot go on. We reiterate our condemnation of Russia's actions, which represent a threat to the international community, and we call once more on Russia to withdraw all of its forces from Ukraine's territory, including Crimea. In the meantime, Ukraine, while exercising its legitimate right to self-defense, continues to work in favor of initiatives aimed at fostering peace and dialogue. I would like to highlight two key initiatives. The first one is the reason why we have gathered here today. The International Crimea Platform seeks to guarantee that international law is respected by working in favor of the defense of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. We will also continue to denounce the situation in occupied Crimea and the risk to regional and world security posed by Russia's illegal occupation. Russia's withdrawal last year from the Black Sea Grain Initiative shows its willingness to weaponize food and world hunger. In contrast, Ukraine has managed to establish an export corridor through the west coast of the Black Sea and has championed its Grain from Ukraine initiative to ensure that Ukrainian grain is delivered to those countries in need. Spain fully supports and contributes to these efforts. The second key Ukrainian initiative aims to bring a comprehensive, just and lasting peace to Ukraine in line with international law, with the UN Charter and relevant UNGA resolution. I am referring to President Zelensky's peace formula and to the process started last June during the Summit on Peace of Ukraine in Switzerland. We encourage our international partners to join this peace process based on the respect of the UN Charter to put an end to Russia's aggression against Ukraine. Esteemed and honored guests, our message today is simple: Crimea is Ukraine. We will continue working in a spirit of solidarity within the international platform and with all international actors until all the people of Ukraine can live in peace in their sovereign country within its internationally recognized borders.
Thank you, Minister. And now it's my pleasure to invite to take the floor the Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Principality of Andorra, Madame Imma Torfaus. Please.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me as Minister of Foreign Affairs to represent the government of the Principality of Andorra in this fourth International Crimea Platform. Today marks 10 years of the illegal occupation of Crimea. Andorra renews its unwavering support for Ukraine's sovereignty, independence and territorial integrity within its international recognized borders. We also give all our support to the government and the people of Ukraine in their right to defend themselves. Since February 2022, Andorra has endorsed all UN General Assembly resolutions to request Russia's accountability for all war crimes and, in particular, crimes against humanity committed in Ukraine. Andorra strongly believes that international law and the rules-based international order are the foundations of multilateralism and the undeniable basis for cooperation, dialogue, and peaceful coexistence among nations. Andorra joined the platform in 2022 and has participated in several summits and conferences to confirm our solid support towards Ukraine. In June this year, our head of government, Mr. Javier Zamora, participated in the Summit on Peace in Ukraine that took place in Birkenstock, Switzerland, and our country adhered to the joint communiqué. Andorra thus reiterated its condemnation of the Russian unjustified aggression, and we requested that all displaced Ukrainian children and all other Ukrainian civilians who were unlawfully detained be returned safely to their homeland. Ever since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Andorra, a country with only 86,000 inhabitants, has made efforts to grant more than 300 temporary residence permits to Ukraine refugees, with access to the labor market, education and healthcare, as well as social and income support to the most vulnerable ones. On the other hand, the government of Andorra continues its firm alignment with the EU's policy and financial package of sanctions against Russia and Belarus. After more than 2 years of intolerable suffering and the loss of so many innocent lives, Andorra believes that dialogue between all parties involved must prevail. In this sense, we, the international community, also hold a responsibility creating bridges and foster negotiations so as to put an end to the grief of the Ukrainian civil population. We must work for peace and human rights and values. I sincerely wish that the results of this fourth International Crimea platform will contribute to move forward in this direction. Thank you for your attention.
Madam Minister, and please welcome Australian Foreign Minister, Her Excellency Penny Wong.
Australia is steadfast in our support for Ukraine's sovereignty, territorial integrity and right to defend itself against Russia's unprovoked, illegal and immoral invasion. Russia must immediately, completely and unconditionally withdraw its forces from within the internationally recognised borders of Ukraine, including the Crimean Peninsula. Now in its fourth year, the Crimea platform has become an important forum for voicing collective efforts to hold Russia to account for its occupation of Crimea and to encourage a comprehensive and lasting peace in Ukraine on its own terms. Addressing Russia's violations of international law are critical to any just resolution of the war. Australia remains deeply concerned by reports of ongoing repressive measures inflicted on those in temporarily occupied Crimea, including widespread political, ethnic and cultural persecution, forced conscription into the Russian armed forces and media censorship. We are inspired by the resolve of the Ukrainian people in Crimea and across Ukraine, who have refused to let Russian aggression rob them of their history, culture and freedom. We have imposed over 1,200 targeted financial sanctions and trade measures against Russia, and we have committed over $1.3 billion in assistance to Ukraine. In terms of military assistance, Australia is the largest non-NATO military contributor to Ukraine. We will continue to pressure Russia and we will continue to support Ukraine for as long as it takes. Russia's war has broad global and economic implications. It has had a terrible effect on food and energy security, making life harder for people across the world, especially the most vulnerable, and it cannot be allowed to become a model. We seek a world where sovereignty is respected, where no country dominates and no country is dominated. Australia looks forward to contributing to the summit.
Thank you, Madam Minister. And our next speaker is His Excellency John De Bono, Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary Ambassador of the Republic of Malta to Ukraine. The floor is yours, Ambassador.
Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished guests, and participants. More than a decade has passed since the Russian Federation illegally annexed Crimea and the port city of Sevastopol. Together with our international partners, we continue to reiterate our firm condemnation to Russia's illegal presence in the Crimean Peninsula and its persistent breaches of international law and human rights through its ongoing aggression against Ukraine. In this spirit, my country reiterates its steadfast commitment to defend Ukraine's sovereignty, as well as its territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders. In this regard, the rightful reintegration of the Crimean Peninsula as part of Ukraine is non-negotiable. We call on Russia to reverse its illegitimate occupation without any further delay. Malta maintains its full support to the courageous spirit of the Ukrainian people. We commend the bravery, determination, and resilience of the people of Ukraine in the face of this indiscriminate destruction by Russia's unjustified war. As the Ukrainian people continue to pay terrible human costs of the ongoing indiscriminate attacks against civilians and the country's critical infrastructure, we reiterate our full condemnation of Russia's choice to choose escalation and devastation. Together with our international partners, Malta continues to share the conviction that all perpetrators of attacks, as well as other international crimes committed against Ukraine and its people, must be held accountable. As to the wider regional context, Russia's challenge to the existing rules-based international order continues to manifest itself in the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. We are equally mindful of the impact of the consequences of the war on the well-being and the safety of societies in this wider area and even further afield. To this end, Malta reiterates its support for the efforts towards providing security of vessels passing through the international sea corridors, especially after Russia's regrettable decision to suspend its participation in the Black Sea Grain Initiative. Our message to the international community remains that any attempts to curtail the freedom of navigation directly undermines global food security. We must not lose sight of the very real repercussions on communities around the world as part of our engagement with the international community. I conclude by recalling Malta's firm belief that the rights of Ukraine and its people under international law are non-negotiable. You can count on our full support to efforts being undertaken by you towards securing a just and lasting peace in Ukraine. Slava Ukraina.
Thank you, Ambassador. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Luis Almagro, Secretary General of the Organization of the American States.
Dear friends, I am pleased to participate in the fourth summit of the International Crimea Platform this year, which marks the 10th anniversary of the occupation of the Autonomous Republic of Crimea and the city of Sevastopol. I fully agree with and support the joint statement issued on February 26, 2024, as well as the goals of the summit. I'd like to highlight a few of them. First, to reaffirm the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. I take the opportunity to reject the illegal annexation of Crimea and any Ukrainian territories illegally occupied. Second, to further the occupation of Crimea. Third, to draw attention to violations of international law and human rights in Crimea by the Russian occupation administration. I also add that presumed referenda and elections that seek to normalize the occupation belong to the same category. They cannot produce any legal effect and constitute a violation of human rights. Fourth, to create the foundations for the platform to become an effective mechanism for ensuring the post-war reconstruction of Crimea after the end of the occupation. On this basis, the preservation of international law, the inviolability of international recognized borders, and our shared values of human rights and fundamental freedoms must be safeguarded. This is what the very concept of an international system is based on. We cannot condone limitation to these norms. To do so would mean accepting the law of the strongest as the main, if not the only, source of relations between sovereign states. For small states, it is about survival. All these principles are vital to us. Our region has been a good example of them throughout the existence of the inter-American system since the end of the 19th century. At the Organization of American States, we immediately spoke out against the violation of the most fundamental principle of international law, humanitarian law and human rights. From the very first statement, we called this invasion a war of aggression. Immediately thereafter, our Permanent Council withdrew the Russian Federation status of observer before this organization, reaffirming the principle that guide us. Along with the international community and a large number of countries, we have called for peace, for the end of aggression, for the non-use of force, for the peaceful solution of the controversy and respect for the norms of international law. We have also said that the invasion poses a threat to the peace and security of the entire planet, including the Western Hemisphere. And we have seen Russia making inroads among autocratic regimes in the Americas. We are especially concerned in the Americas with the fact that it is precisely in the Black Sea where the economic war of aggression has taken place against Ukraine and the rest of the world. If Ukraine cannot export grain, its economy will suffer, prices will rise, and hunger will spread among low-income countries. For all these reasons, we remain fully committed to peace with justice and territorial integrity for Ukraine and for Ukrainian Crimea. The Americas are with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. The next floor will be given to the Secretary of Foreign Affairs of Argentina, His Excellency Leopoldo Francisco Saores. The floor is yours.
The Argentine Republic strongly condemns the invasion of the territory of Ukraine by the Russian Federation, which took place in 2014 and 2022. The Russian Federation must immediately cease the use of force and military operations in Ukraine soil and withdraw its military equipment and personnel. Argentina is convinced that a lasting solution to the delicate situation in Ukraine can only be achieved through peaceful settlement means. For this reason, our country has demanded peace and the de-escalation of the conflict in all multilateral fora, as well as the return of all parties to the negotiating table. Likewise, Argentina has made it clear that international law, including humanitarian law, and the principles of the Charter of the United Nations must be respected. The sovereignty of states and their territorial integrity must be upheld. Our country has supported all the resolutions on this matter at the United Nations General Assembly and the Human Rights Council. Argentina has participated in the National Security Advisors meetings celebrated in Malta, Davos, and Doha, and in the Global Peace Summit in Bergenstock, Switzerland. Furthermore, the Argentine Republic is committed to international peace and security. In line with this commitment, we have joined two of the working groups of the Peace Formula for Ukraine presented by President Zelensky. Number 1 on radiation and nuclear security, and number 5 on the implementation of the Charter of the UN and territorial integrity of Ukraine. We are proud to be a co-chair of the latter group alongside Estonia. Argentina, together with Estonia, is co-chairing Working Group 5 of the Peace Formula, Restoration of Ukraine's Territorial Integrity. My country participated in the meeting convened in New York on the 12th of July, where we had the opportunity to exchange different ideas on how to move forward. As a follow-up to this meeting, we are working closely with Estonia and Ukraine to present a working document as a contribution to our next meeting. We look forward to more countries taking an interest in the progress of this working group and joining us at upcoming events. Let me assure you that Argentina stands with Ukraine.
Thank you, Your Excellency. And now it's my pleasure to give the floor to His Excellency Salem Ahmed Salem Ali Al-Kaabi, Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary Ambassador of the United Arab Emirates to Ukraine. He's joining us online. The floor is yours, Ambassador.
Thank you. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the United Arab Emirates, I would like to thank you for hosting the fourth summit of the International Crimea Platform, which provide a valuable opportunity to discuss the current security, economy, and humanitarian challenge. It's an honor to address you all today. The United Arab Emirates is not standing aside. Our humanitarian mission is to help suffering, promoting human dignity, and provide aid and assistance. This year only, the United Arab Emirates has successfully mediated 7 captive exchange between Ukraine and Russia, bringing the total number of captives exchanged through United Arab Emirates agreement efforts to 912 from each side. These efforts reflect the United Arab Emirates detection, being a trusty intermediary. The success of agreement is the outcoming of the United Arab Emirates leverage its close relationship with both sides. The UAE providing assistance worth over $100 million to support humanitarian struggling in Ukrainian, including over 4,500 electrical generator and at least 50 fully equipped ambulance. This efforts highlight the United Arab Emirates' ongoing long-term detection. We also held the opportunity to assist the Olena Zelensky Foundation directly with the supporting children. But the diplomacy itself is the most effective tool to end the conflict, as we saw in Switzerland last June. Countries from around the world are coming together in serious concentration of how to bring peace to Ukraine. We encourage collective efforts. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Ambassador. And our last but not least speaker for today is Alina Frolova, Security Track Coordinator of the Crimea Platform Expert Network. Пані Аліно, я вас запрошую до слова.
Добрий день, дякую. Я вітаю всіх учасників Кримської платформи.
Thanks for having me. I welcome all the participants of the Crimean platform. I particularly address people from the occupied territory, from the territory of the Crimea. Hopefully they can hear us. We are doing everything possible to liberate these territories. I'm honored to represent an expert network at the Crimean platform. This is an international network comprising more than 70 organizations and several dozens of independent experts working together to bring closer the liberation of our territory, to liberate the Black Sea region, and to design a new security mechanism to work for Ukraine, Europe, and the whole world. As I represent the expert network, I'd like to outline the trends our network has been observing of late And primarily, I'd like to to address our international partners. Mr. Lubinets provided today to us the statistics of political prisoners, considered actually political prisoners in the Crimea today. Unfortunately, we do not know the exact number of people detained in Russia, also on the occupied territory, whether it's children or adults kept here or deep in Russia. And unfortunately, however many people we do our best to release, the numbers will be growing. And I'm speaking not just about Ukrainian nationals, but also about nationals of other countries partnering with Ukraine on that. Why it will continue to work? Because this is a tactic rather efficient. It works for Russians, and Putin himself will be gladly getting more and more people to trade in them. We've seen a big exchange between foreign nationals and Russian killers and spies. It was a clear demonstration of the supreme values that the world, democratic world, and Europe stand to. But what can be said of those who was, tortured, raped, killed? Will we have enough force to protect our people and our borders? At various international conferences, we talk a lot generally about human rights and freedoms. As someone involved in security matters, I can tell you that protection is not about one's weakness. It's rather about being strong. Without that, you won't be able to defend either your next of kin, or your nation, or your territory. It's about one's resilience, one's strong spirit on the battlefield, one's strong economy, one's strength to make decisions, even not pleasing one if you're at the top of the political pyramid. Ukraine had been through that mistake. We did allow ourselves to be weak, and now we have to correct it, paying a steep price, the one of lives. We've been regularly talking about us as the nation of agrarian people, land toilers. Now we're speaking about us as a different nation, able to make the frontier stable and innovate. Question is how you as our partners will be at the time when we are ready to go full steam ahead. We've been speaking a lot about values. Many speakers before me mentioned it. And really, this war is a proof that values are of critical importance. This is something we live and die for. This is what people being in detainment try to use to stay afloat. I did talk to a lot of them, and I was being told that it was very important for us to know that it still made sense, that it wasn't in vain. We, Ukrainians, do not want to go back to the Soviet Empire. We want to be able to independently decide how we live. Democracy is not an empty shell for us. It's very important for us to accept that. It's nonetheless important to understand how people that, have opted to live in dictatorship, in authoritarian country, they have to continue with. The life shows that we cannot affect their choice. Let them do it. But we want to be able to stand to our own principles, to avoid someone else deciding for us. From here, the question will we be strong enough to defend us in our democracy? Last but not least, human rights, a buzzword today. I think still that the key thing here is about human. It's again about one's humanity, this basic right to remain humane, something we are being regularly stolen from us, sometimes even by our partners who allow themselves to humanize war crimes, like the recent documentary by a Russian filmmaker on kind of poor Russian soldiers waging that hard war. This has been this documentary has been widely screened on at Biennale and so on. It's, you know, like monetizing one's lives. This devoids us of normal human emotions, this feeling of justice, our humaneness. There are children of those who are in detainment. How dehumanizing it can go. How can we release these people? We can continue with those one-on-one negotiations, spending years of their lives in these attempts. We may invite other activists. Another thing is probably to prevent people from being caught and taken, kidnapped, taken into prison. There should be some very strict measures to prevent anyone from attacking us, whether hybrid or not. Our military force is to be able to take down drones regardless of the type, without just going to considerations whether it's really too dangerous or not too dangerous one. International maritime shipments should be secure and free to use convenient corridors rather than lengthy bypass ways. Politicians have to be able to call war its proper name, and killers have to be called killers. Definitely, they should not be hugging with invaders' representatives the premises of the Zaporizhia NPP. I think the best strategy of victory is the one of humaneness over evil. A recent security forum in Prague saw Ursula von der Leyen saying these words: we have made a mistake, we had to listen to what Eastern European countries had to tell us. It's nice to be able to recognize one's mistake. It's even more important to start to act to overcome the aftermath. There's really the bell tolling inside all of us Ukrainians. We plead with you, never let yourselves go into hostage status like we had allowed ourselves with the Crimea. This would work better for the world.
Thank you, Ms. Alina.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the end of this busy day, I would like to extend my gratitude to all the participants. Even with the start of the political season in your countries, you took the time to engage in discussions on the current situation in Crimea. Today's summit clearly shows that the international community recognizes the grave and far-reaching consequences of Russia's illegal occupation of Crimea. A special thank you to the countries joining the International Crimea Platform for the first time. Your participation underscores that the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine is a matter of global concern and anxiety. The message is profoundly significant. Restoration of just and lasting peace in Ukraine is inconceivable without the occupation of the whole territory of Ukraine. The Crimea Platform serves as a crucial tool in this process. Ukraine is developing reintegration policies and training young leaders to manage state and municipal bodies in the deoccupied territories. We are grateful to the partners who support these efforts led by the representative office of the President of Ukraine in Crimea. We conclude today's work by approving the joint statement from the 4th summit of the International Crimea Platform. This statement reflects our shared commitment to supporting the deoccupation of Crimea and restoring Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders. In particular, participants agreed to firmly uphold and affirm unwavering support for the sovereignty, independence, unity and territorial integrity of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders, and for Ukraine's inherent right of self-defense against the Russian Federation's unprovoked war of aggression. The participants agreed to continue and increase political, financial, economic, humanitarian, military and diplomatic support for Ukraine in the restoration of its territorial integrity, including the Autonomous Republic of Crimea and the city of Sebastopol. Attendees of the fourth summit welcomed and agreed to continue to work on the outcomes of the first Global Peace Summit, which took place on June 15 to 16, 2024 in Switzerland, as an important step towards full respect of the rules-based international order and comprehensive, just and sustainable peace for Ukraine, based on the principles of the UN Charter and international law. We cannot tolerate inhuman practices carried out by the Russian occupation forces in Crimea, arbitrary detentions of those who demonstrate their protest to massive violations of human rights and freedoms in Crimea. I call on your support to do everything we can in order to free illegally detained civilians, Crimean Tatars, human rights activists who remain imprisoned by the Russian regime for fake charges. The participants welcomed the activities of the International Coalition for the Return of Ukrainian Children to address the illegal deportation and forcible transfer of Ukrainian children to the Russian Federation and to ensure their safe return. Actions of the Russian Federation against Ukraine, in particular the restriction of freedom of navigation in the Black and Azov Seas, severely challenge the maritime security in the region, gravely affect the security and stability of the Black Sea region, disrupt connectivity, threaten global food security, and hamper the economic development of the littoral countries. The successes of Ukrainian armed forces, bolstered by the military support from our partners, have secured a civilian maritime corridor in the Black Sea. This achievement has enabled the resumption of the Ukrainian grain and other exports to global markets, positively impacting global food security. In conclusion, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to all participants for their valuable contributions to the discussions and the special provisions outlined in the joint statement. We are united in our belief that today's meeting represents a significant step toward achieving peace, peace in the region, peace in Ukraine, and peace in united Ukrainian Crimea, because Crimea is Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!
Шановні пані та панове, четвертий саміт.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, the fourth summit of the International Crimea Platform is over.